Hello everyone, I'm Anna, and about 5 weeks ago now I turned 30 and I decided to set myself a challenge in my 31st year of reading 31 brand new books. Now there are several reasons for that. First of all, I'm an English teacher and I think it's really important for me to read a lot and keep up to date with literature. Second of all, I love reading, I love books, I love discussing books. And lastly, I'm currently studying for my Masters in Children's Literature. So far I've read 4 of my 31 books. The first book that I read was All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. Secondly, I read Canada by Richard Ford. Thirdly, I read The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. And the book that I'm going to be reviewing and discussing here is the 4th book, which is We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver. So I hope that if you are a book lover, if you love discussing books and talking about books, then this will be the vlog for you. I'm going to start off by just giving kind of a brief overview of the plot, so don't worry, there's not going to be any spoilers in this section of the video. Now, for those of you that don't know about We Need to Talk About Kevin, the book is created as a series of letters which are from a woman called Eva to her estranged husband. And we learn pretty early on that Eva's son Kevin has been convicted of murder, and not just any murder but mass murder, a huge scale shooting at his high school where he's killed several students and a couple of teachers. And so Eva goes to visit Kevin in prison, and she details not just those visits to the prison but also the story of Kevin's conception, his birth and his growing up. And so that's the format of the book. What I'm going to start off by doing is I'm going to, like any kind of review, I'm going to give my opinion of it, and I'm going to kind of talk about why I feel what I feel before I'm going to move on to any kind of analysis or discussion points. So I think I need to just start off by saying I absolutely loved this book. It was recommended to me by a number of people, overwhelmingly women, and I would say that generally I think this is a book that would appeal mainly to women, especially women who are mothers or who are interested in having children or who work with children. And I think that that is because the book really deals with the idea of what it's like to have a child that you find it very difficult to relate to. And I felt that that really chimed with my maternal instinct. Second of all, I found this book incredibly haunting. After I'd finished reading it, I was up for ages, a couple of hours after I'd finished reading it, kind of researching high school shootings and the parents of those people that have been involved in high school shootings. It definitely left me with a sense of of being haunted, and not in a scary way, but just it was incredibly thought-provoking. And lastly, I would just say it's an incredibly compelling plot. As I said, I was up for a long time reading it. It took me a while to get into it in the first place. I would say a couple of days to really kind of break the back of it, but once I did, I couldn't stop reading. And despite the fact that I had to get up early for a flight last week, I read well into the early hours of the morning just so that I could finish the book. So an incredibly compelling plot, so definitely a read that I would recommend. Another aspect of this novel that I really loved, and it's funny, is actually that none of the characters are sympathetic. I didn't like any of them. Shriver has this incredible knack for making you feel simultaneously hatred and sympathy for all of the characters. So I'll start off with Eva. Now, although you'd imagine you'd feel incredibly sorry for a woman whose son has kind of conducted this kind of atrocious crime, she's not a likeable character at all. She's clearly not a warm or sympathetic mother with Kevin. She is self-centered, she's selfish, she's snobbish, and at times there were things that she said which I felt verged on the racist. Now, I think Shriver is incredibly clever here in making you really dislike this character and actually doubt what she's saying, and yet at the same time, when things happen to her, you feel incredibly sorry for her. Similarly, with the character of her husband, he's an incredibly unsupportive father. He seems oblivious to any form of discipline and just completely unwilling to accept that his son can do any wrong. Yet at the same time, you see him being sort of incredibly affectionate with Kevin and really, really trying hard with him. And again, that makes you kind of feel sympathetic towards the character. And I really, really enjoy this aspect of the novel, because I think Shriver just goes to show that, you know, people are incredibly complicated creatures and they are not completely one thing or another. And I think that kind of leads me quite nicely on to the problem that I have with the novel, which is what's going to be coming up next, which is this kind of 2D, what I'd call a 2D version of Kevin, where she presents him as wholly evil. Whilst I really enjoyed Shriver's portrayal of the other characters as these kind of very rounded characters with their strengths and their faults, I really felt that the portrayal of Kevin was something that I found particularly problematic. Now, whilst it is being narrated by Eva, we do only get this kind of one version of Kevin, which appears to be being presented as completely evil or innately evil, even from birth. There's one particular instance which really bothered me, and it is where Eva describes trying to play with a toddler, Kevin, and she's trying to roll a ball to him and get him to return it, and he's just refusing to do that. And eventually he does do it to show her that he can do it, and then refuses to do it anymore. And when his father returns, he suddenly seems able to switch on his playing and his affection, despite having been horrid to his mother all day. Now, that's something that really bothers me, because to suggest that a toddler has that level of sophistication and vindictiveness is something that I just don't think exists. And I think that kind of portrayal of people, whilst it's fascinating to think that there might be people like that, I find it problematic, because I think it feeds into this sensationalist idea that there are people who are wholly evil. And whilst I can't claim to be an expert in the field of psychology, to completely ignore environmental factors in people's lives, I think is naive. And so I would say that is something that I did find difficult about the novel. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. It is something that I think will stay with me for a very long time. It's something that I would definitely recommend to other people. And as I've said, it's something that I would recommend to women in particular, or those people that work with young people. So I would give this book a total of a 4.7 out of 5-star rating. Up next week will be my review and my discussion of The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath.